Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today at closing ceremony of our 4 days conference on sustainable development in a digital society. This conference was formally inaugurated on 2nd December at Presidency by the President of Islamic Republic of Pakistan, Dr. Arif Alvi. Dr. Abid Suleri in proceedings will tell its summary what it was about exactly. We were live throughout at SDPI.tv, which is our web-based TV, and we were trending on Pakistan's top trend on Twitter with hashtag STC2019. Today's plenary is on living legends of Pakistan, life and work of Dr. Syed Babar Ali. Let me read out his bio because I might not make justice to his profile if I recall from my memory. Dr. Syed Babar Ali is a businessman, philanthropist, and educationist, former caretaker finance, economic affairs, and planning minister of Pakistan 1993, and most famous for founding Pakistan's leading business school, Lahore University of Management Sciences, commonly known as LUMS, in 1985, Packages Limited 1956, Milpak Limited, now Nestle Pakistan Limited. He is amongst the top 12 business leaders of Pakistan. I'll leave his introduction here and will leave on our rest of the very eminent panelists to speak more about him because they have much knowledge to share about his life and work. And we'll tell you a little bit about the format of today's plenary. First of all, Dr. Abid Suleri will be giving 3 days summary, and after that, Dr. Ambassador Shafkat Khalid, Chairperson, Board of Governors, SDPI, will be giving welcome address. Then Ms. Khavar Mamtaz, who is former Chairperson NCSW, will be telling about work and life of Dr. Syed Babar Ali. Then Dr. Khalid Sheikh, who is professor. He has been Vice Chancellor of the University of Punjab, Lahore in 1997 to 99, where he was teacher of botany for nearly 3 decades. Then will Dr. Parvez Hassan, Senior Advocate, Supreme Court, Lahore, will speak about him. Mr. Shahid Hussain, CEO, Service Sales Corporation Limited, Lahore, Pakistan, will speak about his work and experience. Dr. Tariq Panuri, who is Chairperson, Higher Education Commission in Islamabad, will speak about his life. And let me also, this moment of proud for me as well, is to introduce you as a founding executive director of Sustainable Development Conference. Mr. Shamim Ahmad Khan, former Secretary of Commerce, Government of Pakistan. Then will speak Mr. Abdul Razak Daud, who is advisor to Prime Minister for Commerce, Textile Industry, Production and Investment of Pakistan. He will join us shortly. Mr. Abdul Razak Daud, advisor to, I think I'm reading that again, Mr. Shoaib Sultan, who needs no introduction, of NRSP, will speak about his work and life, of course. And then at the end, we'll have publications will be given to our panelists. And this year's publication is SDC Science Anthology, Corridors of Knowledge and Peace. Corridors of Knowledge for Peace and Development. I'm sorry, let me correct that. And this is the very hard work of past 6 months of editors, Ms. Imrana Niazi, Ms. Uzma Haroon, who is director of SDC, and editor Sara Anil. So Dr. Abid Suleri, may I now please request you to tell us a 3 days summary of the conference. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed a great honor and privilege to have a few of the founder directors of SDPI on podium, and I think it's one of the very rare occasions I have them on podium. I have Syed Babar Ali, who is one of the founder director. I have Shoaib Sultan Saab, who is one of the founder directors. I have Tariq Banori, who is the founding executive director. I have Dr. Parvez Hassan, who is who actually wrote our bylaws, one of the founders. So it's indeed a double pleasure for me. One, that we'll be celebrating life of a living legend, Syed Babar Ali Saab. And second, it's indeed, I feel humbled to present them the little sapling that they planted back in 1992, of course, that little sapling SDPI, it didn't grow as LUMS or many other ventures of Syed Babar Ali Saab, but Team SDPI, we can take some sort of pride that we didn't let that sapling wither, and it's flourishing, mashallah. And today's our annual conference, which is 22nd annual conference of Sustainable Development Policy Institute, it is one of the reflection. Now, the conference, it, as Mariam mentioned, it started the formal inaugural by the President of Pakistan, who inaugurated it. We had Harun Sharif Saab, the former chairperson, Board of Investment, and Dr. Sania Nishtar to speak as keynote speakers. We had delegates from 18 countries, from China, from Thailand, from France, Germany, Italy, Iran, India, Sri Lanka, UK, Finland, Kenya, Nepal, Afghanistan, Maldives, USA, Turkey, and Philippines. So these were the delegates, and then of course Pakistan. We had in total 244 speakers in 34 sessions, parallel sessions, and 6 plenaries. So we had the dinner plenaries, we have parallel sessions, and we discussed quite a wide range of issues. We discussed water and climate change, peace and regional stability, youth, peace building, emerging technologies and regional stability, labor and workforce, how this fourth industrial revolution, artificial intelligence, they would be impacting our jobs. Are we ready for the workforce? We discussed education, economy, social protection, and then CPEC, governance and accountability, health, cybersecurity, gender, SDGs, transgender community in and digital space, human rights, how we can use this digital media and digital space to promote and to highlight human rights violations and to promote the voice for human rights protection. We also discussed how our women journalists all over the world, not only in Pakistan, but we had journalists from Germany, from Iran, from India, how they are being harassed online for their reporting. And last but not least, we had a session on food security as well. So these were some of the panels that we covered during last 3.5 days. The participation from the government treasury benches as well as from opposition benches was excellent. We had Dr. Ishrat Hussain sitting here. He was our keynote speaker on the first dinner plenary. We had Dr. Sania Nishtar. We had Dr. Asad Umar, Mr. Asad Umar, Riaz Fatehana, who is the coordinator in the parliament for SDGs. We had Honorable Sataj Aziz Saab. We had Zartaj Gul, State Minister for Climate Change, Senator Shibli Faraz, who is leader of House, Ms. Kamal Shoza, Parliamentary Secretary for Planning, Barrister Shahzad Akbar, who is looking after Interior. Then among senators, we had Ms. Aisha Raza Farooq, we had Shaista Pervez Malik MNA, we had Mr. Hassan Iqbal, we had Mr. Fawad Chaudhry, we had Fardos Ashik Awan, we had Dr. Tariq Banori, we had Mr. Taj Haider, we had Mr. Ghazala Safi, Sayyid Naveed Kamar, Parliamentary Secretary for Health, Dr. Nosheen Hamid, and Razak Daud would be joining us today. So these were different decision makers, movers and shakers in the decision making community who actually participated in these panels. We had head of World Bank, we had a head of ILO, we had a head of FES, and the country rep of IMF, she was also here for some, as a participant. We had EU ambassador, French ambassador, South African ambassador. So this was a pretty large canvas that we covered during last 3.5 days. And now without wasting much time, I think now we come to the concluding plenary, and the concluding plenary is to celebrate the achievements of Syed Babar Ali Saab. And I will just have to make a slight change in the order. Dr. Tariq Banouri, despite his commitment, you know, HEC is also holding a parallel international conference on higher education quality assurance, which is taking place in Serena. And Tariq has to go and conclude chair the concluding panel of that conference. Sorry, Dr. Ishrat is sitting here, but you will be escorting the chair. So Tariq, may I quickly request you? I can start with you, and then I can say goodbye to you, and I'll come to my original order.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First of all, my deep thanks to Abid Suleri and to SDPI for inviting me to the annual conference. This is one of the traditions of SDPI, of which I'm very proud, and I'm very grateful that I get invited. But most importantly, I'm very grateful that I'm here to join in the voices to pay respect to Babar Ali Sahab. I think all of us, not only people on the podium, but people in the audience, are his admirers, in many ways his students, and it is our responsibility to express orally and in writing the debt that we owe to him. I want to make 2 or 3 comments. As Abid has said, we have to rush to another meeting. But one of the things that we always think about when we think about the history of this country is to say that the true history of the country is constituted not by governments, not by parliaments, but by people who actually made this country, people who leave something that endures, who leave something which helps build up the country and bring it to a new level. And when you look back, there have been a history, a number of people who have actually contributed, provided the bricks, the foundation stones, the concrete, the elements that have and will continue to build this country. There are other people also. I would include Shoaib Sultan Khan as one of those people. I think the knowledge that he has given us, the experience that he has given us on rural development has really transformed the way we think about it, and has brought a whole generation of people into doing work which they otherwise would never have done, and changed the lives of millions of people. And one can look back at others. I was thinking of other names that one should mention. Ghulam Farooq Sahab, the founder of WAPDA, and also the one who transformed PIDC from, basically a not very effective organization into something that was effective, and then ended up creating WAPDA, an organization that has stood the test of time and is with us today. Aslam Azhar Sahab, who took over PTV when nobody knew what it was and made it into a force to be reckoned with. I mean, there are people like this that the country has produced, and these are the people that we should honor. They're the ones who have built the country. They're the ones who have created the Pakistan that we love and the Pakistan that will endure. This is the legacy that we need to build upon. And what I wanted to talk about was the fundamental role that Babar Ali Sahab has played in building the country that we truly value and appreciate. Now, I will talk about the 2 major areas that I'm familiar with. One is LUMS, of course, and the other one his major role in the environmental movement. I know others will have more to say about this, but those are the 2 areas that I will focus on. But before that, let me just preface my remark by providing a bit of a framework itself. The great Harvard economist Joseph Schumpeter, in his theory of economic development, was probably one of the first who introduced the critical role of the entrepreneur who is the key element in a modern capitalistic society, the one who actually creates something out of nothing. Schumpeter's idea was twofold. One is that he said, look, modern society is not something that grows linearly. He says it's a discontinuous society. At each point in time, you can see it's operating in certain principles, but you can keep on going around this, but it will not take you to the next level. Something discontinuous has to happen to take you to the next level. And that discontinuous thing that has to happen is not visible to anybody. The people to whom it is visible, for them it is obvious, but to everybody else, it's just invisible, it doesn't exist. And that person to whom it is visible, he called the entrepreneur. He gave two examples, which I'll very quickly mention. One is, the example of the transition that he meant when he talked about the discontinuity. He said, look, think about travel between one place A and place B. He says, when there's very little traffic, people may walk or they ride on horses. When there's enough, then a wagon cart comes up. And then when there's more, then maybe you have 2 wagon carts or 3, it becomes longer and longer. And, but he says, no matter how many wagon carts you add, it doesn't become a railroad. A railroad is a discontinuous process. And it does, of course, require some external change, but it actually requires somebody who will actually come back and, and build that railroad and create it and take you from this level into that level. And this role of the entrepreneur is absolutely fundamental in this. The second component, or the second point that he made, which I think was also fundamental, is that it is not, he said, the role of the entrepreneur, when we say it is to create something new, it is not the idea itself. It is actually making something happen. He said he used a term, bricolage. It's a French term. My friend André is sitting there. He'll recognize it. The term is bricolage, in which you put some things together from elements which may just exist, and putting something together creates something new. Bricolage is that the different components are kind of, they're just sitting there. And people sort of see them as what they are, but nobody understands that you can put them together, right? So it's not as if you are sort of bringing new resources. The resources are there, you just don't know how they're going to fit together. And somebody finds a way of fitting them together, and lo and behold, something new happens. So it's this bricolage process that he talked about. My colleagues and I, at one point, we used some of this idea to look at a number of innovations that had taken place in the entire developing world. We have a series of books called Civic Entrepreneurship. Civic entrepreneurship meaning people who do this kind of entrepreneurial work in the civic domain. And the idea, again, is that it's not that they're doing it for personal profit, but it is something that they do it in order to bring about the transformation. Just somebody to occupy my seat. To bring about the transformation. Now, think about these words, the entrepreneur, the bricklayer, the civic entrepreneur, and then think about the work that the two things that I'm talking about. So, to go back to Schumpeter, it is not just the idea, it is the implementation of the idea, it is the scale of the idea. Anybody can do a pilot experiment. If it's not to scale, it might as well not exist. It is the sustainability of the idea. Is it going to last? Will it endure? It's the sustainability also in a financial terms of the idea. Will it be able to sustain itself? And then there are two additional elements of this, which were later on pointed out by somebody like Albert Hirschman. One is the imitation, whether the idea gets imitated, replicated. And finally, the linkages. So imitation is when somebody does exactly like this. The linkages is when it leads to other positive developments that take place in the country. It's almost like a tree. The tree itself may grow and become bigger and bigger, but there are other trees growing, not only the same species, but other species growing because of this tree. and that kind of a backward and forward linkages are this form of success. Now, Babar Sahab has a number of entrepreneurial creations to his credit. Of course, there's packages and the Tetra Pak and Milk Pack. But let's talk about LUMS. At the time that he established LUMS, there was exactly one non-government university, namely the Aga Khan University, with a lot of deep pockets and so on. And Babar Sahib came in and said, let's just do this. He ended up establishing a university. He mobilized a large number of industrialists who not only contributed, but have actually invested their time and commitment and effort to it. He mobilized the highest level of academic quality of faculty. He created programs, starting with the business program, and then the social sciences program, and the law policy program, engineering, and so on. He created international linkages. He mobilized resources from external sources. He set up a business structure for the university itself, and he set up the linkages with policy making through the Housing Training Center, which also is something, the idea of the Harvard Summer Executive School, which he brought back into Lahore through the Housing Center for this thing. Now, this is really a fundamental transformation that has taken place in this country. And the big example of this is that, everybody and their brother-in-law now is either doing it or wishes to do it. Suddenly, people now have the confidence that we can do this. The first person who did it, nobody knew this could be done. Once it is done, you have large numbers of people who are able to do it. Imitation is the greatest form of flattery, and that imitation is happening. And of course, Habib University is another very good model. But we now have a number of institutions that are coming up. They all look to LUMS. The LUMS is the gold star, not only of non-profit education, but of education in the country. It's also something that has spun off a whole range of other activities in the country. I would mention one thing, that the LUMS graduate is now almost a category by itself. That, when we are looking for people, it is possible now to say that I'm looking for somebody like a LUMS graduate. He or she may not actually be a LUMS graduate, but an idea that somebody like this, with this kind of a background, that too has now become a kind of almost a term for itself. So the entire nation is in Syed Babar Ali's debt for literally opening up this new field of activity, which is now attracting both human and financial resources. I could go on this, since as the chairman of HEC, this is one of my responsibilities to see how it can multiply, not only in terms of people doing this, but trying to aspire to the kind of quality that Babar Ali Sahab has been able to sustain at LUMS. But I do want to mention the environmental side also. I know Parvez Hassan Sahab is there, and he will do much more justice to it than I can. But I do want to mention the two things with which I was connected. One, of course, brings Parvez and Shoaib Sahab and myself together, is SDPI itself. When we founded SDPI, we were trying to look for the good and the great to help us. And we thought, let's try to ask Babar Ali Sahab. We weren't sure that he would say yes, but to our surprise that he did. So he agreed to join the Board of Governors, and when he joined, a lot of people said, well, he's very busy and he might not be able to come, but at least you have his name on your board. Well, lo and behold, he came to every single meeting. He came to the meeting, he was thoroughly prepared, he gave good advice, he gave good guidance. His commitment did not weaken because of the multiple other commitments that he had. Every commitment that he took on it with the kind of professionalism that he represents. I must say that I learned a lot from him in terms of his participation in the board in our board of governors meetings. This is the way board of governors are supposed to behave. The second story with which I will have to conclude is that after SDPI had been set up, we were Pakistan was quite active in the Commission on Sustainable Development in New York, and we were making presentations about, you know, the ambitious plans that Pakistan, particularly civil society, has, and you know, international sort of representatives of other governments would typically come up to me after every time of the meetings and said, well, you know, are there ways in which we can help? And once I gave a talk on industrial pollution, and the Swiss government representative came in, and I said, well, you know, one thing we do want to do is to help start a process of cleaning up the industrial sector, but we need good advice on what can be done and how it can be done, etc. And they said, you know, we'll provide some resources for this, and you know, why don't we put together something? Now, we had done a paper study, but in order to take that forward, we actually needed to work directly with the industry. And in our naivete, we thought, well, it's not going to be a problem. It turned out it was impossible. You know, nobody would let us enter the industry. So luckily, either there was a meeting or maybe I picked up the phone and I called Babar Sahab and I said, gee, we have this problem. We would like to move on this area, but we don't know what to do. And he said, how can I help you? And I said, well, I partly, you know, just give us some advice, but partly also to say that, you know, can we start with packages? And he said, absolutely, packages is yours. So he picks up the phone and calls him, and the next day Tariq Hamid Saab called me and he said, send your team, we are in business. So we went there, we sent our team, you know, with the Swiss experts and so forth, and we did the entire environmental audit of packages, you know, came up with a plan, did all of the calculations. Then Babar Sahab called the family in, I forget now, Salim. Assam Salim? They called them, and we then began work on the textile sectors. And as a result of this environmental audit, we then put together a stakeholder group in which, of course, the business community was represented through the paper industry, but also the textile industry, Textile Processing Manufacturers Association, but also trade unions, NGOs, government, media. We put some of those things, we put some ideas on the table. Those ideas then became the basis of the National Environmental Quality Standards, which were approved by the government of Pakistan. So the National Environmental Quality Standards came into force because one door was open, and that was Syed Babar Ali Sahab. Without that, it would not have happened. Not only did the environmental quality standards happen, then the Environmental Protection Act of 1997, which is actually a very, very good act, and which includes not only the environmental quality standards, but all of the principles that we had put in of facilitating the transition towards a clean economy, were made possible as a result of this very extensive research work that we had done. So I am personally enormously, immensely grateful to Babar Sahab for all of the doors that he has opened for people in this country. He has established institutions. This is an example of the laws that happened because of him. He has established new methods, new ways of doing things, and new ways of working. And this is the true history of Pakistan. This is the real history of Pakistan. When we look back on it, this is something that will last, this will endure. And for this, we are forever in his debt. Thank you very much, Babs.
Thank you very much, Tariq Banori, for setting the scene. And now I'll come to my original order. May I request, again, a very respected, like a mentor for me, Mr. Sartaj Aziz Sahab. Sartaj Aziz Sahab has a strong affiliation with Syed Babar Ali Sahab, and I had to actually bother him a lot while we were organizing this plenary, so I was going to him again and again, trying to find out the right people we should invite. I know Babar Ali Sahab has a huge fan club, and our limitation was that we only had 2 hours to conclude this plenary. So I was getting guidance and advice from Sartaj Sahab for this very important event. So Sartaj Sahab, if I may request you to share your thoughts.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We all attend seminars and events which give us knowledge, which intellectually stimulate us. But there are very few events which touch our heart and stimulate us emotionally. And even more rare are those events which touch our soul. And today is that event, because we are honoring a person, a life as noble and as rich as Syed Babar Ali. I met Syed Babar Ali almost 58 years ago in 1962. I was a student at Harvard University when I saw a notification on the notice board that said Babar Ali, a well-known business leader and chairman of packages, will address Pakistani students. So I went there. It was a very stimulating talk. After the presentation, I went up to him, complimented him, and said I fully share his optimism about the future of Pakistan economy, because at that time, as some of you would have read, Ayub Khan's reform had just taken place, and our growth rate had picked up to almost 6% in 61, 62 from a very low level, and therefore he was very optimistic about the future opening up. After that, he remained on my mental radar throughout the next 6 decades as an outstanding business leader, a great institution builder, a committed educationist, a philanthropist, and above all, a patriotic Pakistani. As most of you know, Syed Babar Ali belongs to an exceptional family of outstanding business leaders. He therefore got ample opportunities for exploring new ideas. In 1954, when he was only 28 years old, he went to Sweden to buy packing material for Treat, a razor blade company set up by his family in Hyderabad. When he met Mr. Crawford, the chief executive, he asked him to set up a plant to manufacture packing material in Pakistan, because all the new industries being set up need packing material. Syed Babar Ali's Swedish friends were not only convinced by the business potential of the idea, but by the sincerity and dynamism of Syed Babar Ali. They readily offered plant and machinery for Packages Limited as their equity. Within 3 years, by 57 Packages was in production at a prime location in Lahore as a joint venture. Since then, as most of you are aware, it has become one of the most successful industrial institutions in the country. In the next few years, Syed Babar Ali concluded several other joint ventures: Tetra Pak of Sweden, Coca-Cola of USA, Nestle of Switzerland, Mitsubishi of Japan. His main guiding principle in all his business venture was their impact on the lives of the people and not just profit. As he said in one of his interviews, a real entrepreneur is one who can think beyond his own lifetime. Syed Babar Ali's most outstanding contribution, of course, was the Lahore University of Management Sciences, LUMS. At an early stage, he had recognized the importance of education and training when he saw that most of the job seekers which were coming to their companies for jobs were not qualified. So very early in 61, he set up the Ali Technical Institute. Then between 74 and 77, when he was managing director of the National Fertilizer Corporation, he was seriously handicapped by the paucity of good managers. Having been to Harvard Business School, he started evolving the vision and roadmap of a school on the model of the Harvard Business School in Pakistan. As a superb salesman, he soon secured promises of financial support from many other business groups, including his friends like Razak Dawood. Finally, LUM started in September 86 with 36 students in 2 rented houses in Gulbarg, Lahore. After he got a charter for LUMs from the federal government in 1987, he purchased 100 acres of land along the DHA's boundary in Lahore, and in 91, he also succeeded in getting a grant of $10 million from USAID, with which he built this very impressive and marvelous campus for LUM on that location. But Barbarella, with his infinite capacity for new innovative ideas, carried LUMS to new heights, introducing a very elaborate program of scholarship for students from low-income groups to study at LUMS as long as they fulfilled the admission criteria. People regard LUMS as a very expensive institution, but because of his initiative, a very large proportion of students comes from low-income group because of the scholarship scheme. Then combining academic program with field visits and community work to enable all graduates to learn from ground realities. This is again something not very usual in educational institution, so he added this qualitative dimension to LUMS. Then of course, much more ambitiously, from management sciences, he moved on to School of Sciences and Engineering. He realized that the complementarity, it needed a law school as well as engineering and science. But for that, the amount of spade work, which I myself observed on many occasions, inviting a very eminent group of professors from MIT and other American institutions to design the syllabus and the course, which is both up to date and relevant to our needs. So the School of Science and Engineering started in 2010, but lo and behold, they did not change the name LUMS. It was called previously Lahore University of Management Sciences. Now it became Lahore University of Management and Sciences. So that it remained LUMS, but it became University of Sciences. So again, very skillful innovation that he was able to achieve. They have achieved almost 5,500 graduates since its inception, providing qualified managers and executives, which everybody is seeking in all sectors of the economy. But as a pattern in education, in the true sense, he did not confine himself to business education. He set up the Naqsh School of Art in 2003 in the beautiful Mubarak Haveli inside the walled city of Lahore. And his basic purpose was to teach art to those aspiring students who wanted to adopt art as their profession. His other aim was to preserve and project the cultural heritage of the beautiful old city of Lahore, because if you visit the next school, you will see a magnificent display of which captures the beauty of the walled city of Lahore. So he combined two objectives in that sense. In 2010, Syed Babar Ali donated a large piece of land on Firozpur Road to set up the Ali Institute of Education, a degree awarding private university. Its initial purpose was, of course, to produce high-quality teachers, but has now added for other faculties, including IT and business administration. In its endless pursuit of knowledge, art, and culture, Syed Babar Ali has published or republished some rare and outstanding works of poetry, philosophy, and religions as a valuable contribution to our libraries and our cultural heritage. These are, he has been kind enough to send me, and they are so beautifully printed that I'm sure many of you would like to have access to those. The New York Times, in an article in December 2009, said, Babar Ali is not only an institution builder, but in himself an institution. Yet you will be... you will understand the full meaning of this tribute if you read Syed Babar Ali's biography, which is titled Learning from Others. A man of old world charms, he combines grace with humanity. His biography is a fascinating blend of the political, social, and economic history of not only Pakistan, but the subcontinent. Syed Babar Ali has received many national and also international awards from the government of Sweden, the government of Netherlands, and Great Britain. His latest award was the Pakistan Society Award 2017, presented to him by Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, for his dedicated services to the conservation of nature. In 1996, as just mentioned, Syed Babar Ali succeeded Prince Philip as the 4th president of WWF, the World Wildlife Fund International. Fortunately, in 2004, I also relocated to Lahore to join the Beacon House National University. This also provided me the valuable opportunity for regular interaction with Syed Babar Ali to benefit from his experience in setting up and managing LUMS. Of course, I am personally grateful to him for writing such an incisive foreword to my memoirs, which were published by Oxford University Press in 2009 under the title Between Dreams and Realities, Some Milestone in Pakistan History. As I was finishing the book, I was thinking, who should write this foreword? I did not go to any politicians, so many whom I knew. I went to the most noble soul of Pakistan, which was Syed Babar Ali. In conclusion, of course, may I thank the Board of Directors of SDPI for conferring this Lifetime Achievement Award on someone who is truly a living legend. Thank you.
I'll again slightly change the order. I know Khabar Mumtaz has to catch a flight, her flight, and she has to reach the airport. So, ma'am, if I can request you to say your words about Babar Ali Sahab, and then you can leave whenever you feel like. I don't want to pressurize you on the traffic rush.
Janab Syed Babar Ali, all the eminent panelists sitting here, I won't take your names one by one. Each one is very eminent, and I've had the opportunity of working with several of them. Distinguished audience, and thank you, Abid and SDPI, for asking me to join this very, for me, an honor and privilege to speak about Syed Babar Ali, who I came to, heard about when I came to Lahore almost 50 years ago. And he was already a name that was known. His fame was already there in Lahore. And my introduction to Syed Babar Ali was through my husband, who spoke very highly of him for his architectural sensitivities and sensibilities, especially in choosing the architect for his house, and also for his interest in conservation, and conservation of buildings as well as conservation of the environment, his interest in arts and his support to the art. I've not had the occasion of working for Syed Babar Ali, but I've had occasion of working with him. We were members of the same board. He was chairing the board in that time when we were all looking forward to regional peace and security in the SARC region. And Syed Babar Ali co-chaired the center, what was it called? SASEPS, yes. The South Asia Center for Policy Studies. And at that time, one got to work with him fairly closely when we were thinking of the vision behind having something like that, a policy study group in the SARC region to develop joint and collective policies as well as joint and collective initiatives that would bring us together as a cohesive region. And I remember that we developed the Citizen Social Charter in that time, and the Pakistan the contribution was given to me as a responsibility. But the guidance that we received from him and his colleagues was what got us into that thinking of a larger regional cooperation and collaboration. I also, my introduction to Syed Babar Ali in terms of environment was when I succeeded him as the regional councillor in IUCN. And it was a very difficult task, to get into those, try and get into those shoes that he, and his footprint that he'd left in the thinking of IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. I have another colleague sitting here who was part of IUCN at that time. Dr. Parvez Hassan was there, and later, for a short while, Dr. Tariq Banuri was also on that council. And that's when I discovered the kind of depth and also the linkages that were formed between IUCN and WWF, because they had a tense history also from time to time. But indirectly I've benefited from some of the initiatives of Syed Babar Ali. We have been engaged in the work of LUMS, either as a lecturer, coming to lecture, or being part of their research committees. Similarly with WWF, because getting into the environmental sector and conservation sector, WWF really developed and flowered under your guidance and also the guidance of Mr. Khalid Saab. And I remember, I don't know if you remember, you once asked me to come and become the director of WWF, and I felt that I was just not qualified enough to take on that kind of a task. But the shafqat with which you dealt with all of us, I think is what we remember very well, and the inspiration that you provided, especially in the way that WWF then grew and became the entity it is now. And I then had opportunity of working with that organization quite a bit, especially to bring in the gender dimension to environmental conservation and the whole initiatives on natural resource management, especially the Indus for All program. The other thing that really Mr. Sartaj Aziz has mentioned is his interest in art and conservation. The Mubarak Haveli, their whole family Haveli that was conserved, and which has been used again and again by a lot of people for the arts, and the initiative to take the skill of art, miniature art and other art, to the community, to the walled city, I think was a very important initiative, rather than opening a shop and asking people to come outside and away from where they live, to bring the skill to the people, and the opportunity, I think, was very commendable. And as you know, that we, the Ali Institute, or the Ali Institute for Education, it was always open for outsiders to come and use. And as a member of Women's Action Forum, we have used those premises many times and extremely well, and really appreciate the generosity that we got from the openness to use these facilities for all kinds of activities, from children's playground and their whole range of things, to women's activism. So I do appreciate the vision, the openness, and also to be able to go with contemporary times and be in advance of what is happening and be ready for it. And I think that's what we've seen as a beacon for all of us, that to be able to foresee what has to come and to identify what is needed, and to keep your interest and your roots in mind. I think that's what you epitomize, and I would like to pay tribute to you for that. And finally, I will also remember when we had set up our organization, Shirkatgah, it was very small, and we needed to publish a book but had no money for paper. I knocked at your door, and you gave us some of the finest paper that you had, which we've never had the opportunity. We could never find something as good afterwards for our publication. So thank you very much, Uncle Power, and for being there and for being an inspiration. Thank you.
Thank you, Khabarapa. Now, may I request Dr. Pervez Hassan. I've been trying to invite him to our conferences for last at least 7-8 years, and thanks to Barbarella Saab, finally we got hold of him. He's such a busy person to come to any of the event. Professor.
Thank you, Abid. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. You know, he's Babar to a few, he's SBA to many, he's Uncle Babar to some, but he's Shah Sahab to me. So Shah Sahab, great pleasure to be here. You know, it's really a privilege to participate in something as exciting, as momentous, and as inspirational as acknowledging for a lifetime's achievement the contribution of Shah Sahab in what we have gathered here to do. I am hugely pleased to be a part of this celebration. But I did want to say, and this is for Abid, that I don't see Mrs. Parveen Babar Ali here. I see Heather. I don't see Henna. But these are the people that really anchored the success and the glamour and the magic that is Syed Babar Ali. I really wanted to, for all of us to convey, to Mrs. Parveen Babar Ali, to Henna, Heather is already here, our gratitude to have so well supported a man who has provided a compass, who has provided a sense of direction, and who has provided so much inspiration to all of us in Pakistan. You know, when I stand here and I want to say something nice, I know Syed Babar Ali, I've been on many fora like this, he gets very uncomfortable when people say nice things about him. But Shah Sahab, relax today, because we have to be very truthful today. I really wanted to sum up his life, and I was reminded of that eloquence of Adlai Stevenson. And he spoke about Eleanor Roosevelt, and I think he summed up Syed Babar Ali's life, that the quality of his life is such that he never curses darkness, he always lights candles. And Syed Babar Ali, we thank you for the many, many candles you've lit in Pakistan. You know, when you come to sort of summing up his life, 2 or 3 things come to my mind. First, transformation. 2, empowerment. 3, inspiration. Outside the governments, I've never met, I've never known of an individual who has empowered so many, who has inspired so many as Syed Babar Ali. He really has been a huge motivator, a huge role model in my life. Just a few weeks ago, not actually a few weeks, just a few nights ago, I was at a dinner in Lahore, the class of 89 at LUMS, 30 years, and there were 37 graduates that year, and 22 of them were in Lahore that night, having traveled from all over Pakistan, the Gulf, Saudi Arabia. And many of them spoke. And the words that came out in every remark was how Syed Babar Ali had transformed the lives of each of those individuals. They told the stories about how humble their origins, their commitments in life were, and how successful they had now turned out to be. Each of them talked about him as a role model. Each of them talked about the inspiration that he has been in his life. And it was such a pleasant sight seeing this grand man sit there like a good godfather with everybody queuing up to pay respects respectfully to the grandeur, to the magnificence that this man represents. I was fortunate almost 50 years ago when I was a young 27, and I think the hero in my life was Tanzania. Something was happening in Tanzania that Packages was getting involved in, and they looked around for lawyers. I had just started my law practice in Lahore, and the project was Kibo, Tanzania, and Babar Ali Saab found out that there's a lawyer who knows a little about foreign investments, and sure enough, I was very fortunate to meet with him, Mr. Shahid Hussain, and Tariq Hamid to start my work for Packages. And it's been a long and happy journey since. 50 years of lawyering, 50 years of advising, 50 years of an evolving friendship. And he writes in his books that he learns from others. And I have to tell from each incident that I have been associated with him as to what I learned from him. I was his lawyer and have been his lawyer for 50 years in Packages, National Fertilizer Corporation. Almost anything that he has done publicly, I've been a part of. And what I have learned as his lawyer, as his confidant, is that it takes time to find somebody that he wants to do something for him. But once he decides who that person will be or is, he supports him fully. There are times when he asks me to do things that are very complex, that require decision-making. But the quality of my association is such that when he turns to a lawyer, he takes the advice of the lawyer. When he turns to an accountant, he takes the advice of an accountant. I suppose when he turns to a doctor, he takes the advice of a doctor also. So what I have learned is that it takes time to pick people up. But once he has picked them up, he supports them and backs them fully. There's this story I have. He traveled to, I think it was New York. We traveled for one of the banks that he opened in Pakistan. And we flew out. We stayed at the Harvard Club in New York, and in the morning that we had these complex negotiations, we took a taxi and went out to the American Express office in downtown New York. And the awe that this gentleman excites is you sit on a global international table, the chairman of American Express, all the big wigs in American Express, and I heard the chairman of American Express turn to his secretary and say, "How did Mr. Babar Ali come here?" And he was told that Mr. Babar Ali took a taxi and came in the taxi to that meeting. So the chairman turned to the secretary, put a limousine at his disposal for all the time he is in New York. Now, I mention this because this is how you get respected. You know, I've never seen this kind of respect extended to the many, many clients I've traveled with to America. Many, many. But there's a certain awe, a certain mystique, a certain respect that this gentleman inspires and commands. And you're really a proud thing to be on the table representing him and his vision. You know, I could talk forever. I'll just talk briefly the 5 associations I've had with him in what we call public interest causes. The first, again, when I was a young lawyer, he turned to me to join him. He was the president of the World Wildlife Fund, Pakistan, and he asked me to be a member of the board, and he really rooted my interest in the environment. We went on to work in the International Union of Conservation of Nature, as Khalid was mentioning. He was the vice president. I became the chair of the Commission on Environmental Law. And we worked on the environment, conservation. I traveled with him to all the national parks here, whether it was Kirthar, to see wild ibex at 4 to 5 in the morning emerging from the mountains. I was with him in the Lal Swara National Park watching the black buck in the Lal Swara National Park. I was with him, with the board, watching the Chinkara in the Kalabagh Reserve in Punjab. But anything he did it with a quality that really propelled him to more and more success. I got to work with him when he was the president of the World Wildlife Fund Pakistan. It took him to becoming a regional counselor for IUCN, to becoming a vice president of IUCN, and then to peak, and this is no mean peaking, to be the president of the World Wildlife Fund Global International, not Pakistan, succeeding the Duke of Edinburgh. So that's the quality of the leadership of the man that we seek to honor today. I next worked with him in LUMS. वो दो बैठे हुए हैं यहाँ, तारीख इसलिए मैंने नोट लाया. The date is the 29th of December 1983, and I get a call from Razak. And the call is, he calls him Babar. Babar is with me. We want to consult with you on some matters. So that is the beginning of the 37 years association on LUMS. We sat down and conceptualized what LUMS would be, what kind of organizational governance structure it will have. And the vision at that time was only for a business school, but it grew from a business school to a school of humanities, to a school of engineering, to a school of law, to a school of education, and now hopefully to a school of economics. So he starts with a business school and he ends up with 6 schools. But the most remarkable thing that I need to tell you about LUMS is what he brings to these campuses. 4 or 5 things. And we took that to the Shaukat Khanam Hospital also. 4 or 5 things. And that, I would say, is the legacy of the man we honor today. 1, everything should be done on merit. कोई सिफारिश नहीं, सवाल नहीं पैदा होता. When you say something like that today, it resonates because there may be a few institutions in Pakistan that have owned this work ethic. But 40, 50 years ago, I think we were the first ones to have brought in that work ethic. कोई सिफारिश नहीं, merit पे सब काम होगा. And there's no exception. There's no door that opens other than on merit. Number 2, if it's an educational institution, it's based on need. अगर कोई बच्चा या बच्ची काबिल है इस चीज़ के कि उस इदारे की तालीम ले सकता है, तो हम आंखें बंद करके उसको ज़राए पेश करते हैं ताकि वो उसमें शामिल हो. So it's need-based, merit-driven, and these are some of the things that he has brought. No VIP culture. We've never had an event in any of these places जहाँ वो seats लगी हों reserved for VIPs. These things may look commonplace today, but when we started these many, many years ago, they were unique. And I'm proud that with his leadership, we got there. I don't really want to rush. The next association is वो कप्तान का अस्पताल. And the time is 1988. The Kaptan comes to my house and he says he wants to build a cancer hospital. You have funds? The answer is no. Do you have land? The answer is no. Do you have any medical advisors? The answer is no. Do you have a hospital design? The answer is no. I said, then what have you come here for? He said, I've come here with a determination. And I said, why me? He said, you helped out Babar Ali and Razak Daud put together LUMS successfully. They say you've got the Midas touch. What you touch turns into gold. So can you help me? So I said, I can help you if you let me put the whole team together for you. And he said, that's the first thing I was told that you would say if I came to you. So put together the team. And that's how Razak Daud, Babar Ali, we got into the foundational work, and we led Shaukat Khanam for 10 years. वो जो बातें मैंने की थी, वीआईपी कल्चर नहीं होगा, नीड बेस्ड होगा, मेरिट होगा, ये सब चीज़ें अब उस इदारे में भी चली गई. Legacy of the man we honor today. I'll rush. We next get into SDPI. Tariq Banuri talked about it. यहाँ आबिद भी बैठे हैं. Again, see what's happening is, in addition to my work, my corporate work, which is my breadline, I handle all non-profit work on a pro bono basis. लोगों को पता चल गया ये मुफ्त करता है, तो जो मुफ्त काम होता है मुझे फ़ोन आता है. मुझे टेलीफोन आया कि SDPI बनानी है. तारिक बनोरी was conducting the vision, और मैं मुंशी होता हूँ. I always put down the governance structures and do these things. So बाबर अली साहब भी उसमें थे, उसमें शमीम साहब. So some of us got together, we put together the foundational thing, and what happens is when you come in, you lead it for about 8, 5, 10 years, and again the same culture coming in, and each organization that we went to with Babar Saab's leadership, we took the same work ethic. और अब आप आखिर में बात करना चाहता हूँ. Babar Ali Saab has this infinite ability, I'm sorry I use the word, to pick pockets. Fundraising, it's called fundraising. And there are 3 persons that I've been very privileged to closely work with in what they call fundraising and I call pickpocketing. एक ईदी साहब थे, remarkable man. उनको मैंने माल रोड की सड़क पे देखा with a bowl begging for money, and he was very successful when the money he raised. Then there was a Kaptan, also very successful. He would go into a city, at Gujranwala, any place like this, and when he entered the city, it was like Jesus entering Nazareth. People queuing up, पैसा फेंक रहे हैं, 5 रुपए, 10 रुपए, 25 रुपए, 100 रुपए. But the third fundraiser that I've known, successful, Syed Babar Ali. He's such a successful fundraiser that whenever he walks out of my office, I check up my wallet. Magar, the lesson here is, how do you become a good pickpocket? Trust. People have to have trust in you. And trust is not a 1 moment, 1 minute thing. You've got to breed that trust. आपको कोई पैसा देता है, आपको कोई चीज़ उससे करनी होती है, और अगर आप उससे वो कर लें, तो फिर आप और के लिए जाते हैं. So you never retire on trust. It keeps going. And for all the years that I've known Babar Ali Saab, he has been one of the most remarkable fundraisers I have known. ईदी साहब सड़क पे खड़े होते थे, इमरान खान शहरों में जाता था और स्कूल के बच्चों से लेता था. Babar Ali Saab picks up the telephone. He picks up the phone or he makes a visit, and he makes the other person a lot poorer financially, but rich spiritually. Babar Ali Saab, I thank you for all these things you've done for me in my life, and I only wanted to say in the end that over 80 friends from all over the world joined to tribute SBA in his book on celebrating SBA's 90 years. The best tribute, I thought, came from one of his family members who highlighted that SBA's life shows that the giver, by giving, enriches himself, and the enabler, by enabling, liberates himself. Shah Saab, SBA, Babar, uncle to others, has happily well enriched and well liberated himself. I salute Shah Saab and his role model life. I thank him for his friendship, and for immeasurably enriching mine. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pervez Saab. Thank you, Khabar Mumtaza, for being here. I know you have to go to airport. The next speaker on my list is Dr. Khalid Sheikh Saab, former Vice Chancellor, Punjab University. Dr. Saab, over to you.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Syed Babar Ali Sahab and distinguished speakers and guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am very grateful to SDPI for giving me this opportunity to speak on this occasion. I learnt of Syed Babar Ali in 1956 when my elder brother Tariq Hamid, civil engineer by training, joined Packages Limited. But I met him in 1966 when I got my PhD from University of London in Botany, Plant Ecology. And then I, maintained contact with him wherever he could find time to see me. Then it was 1980, he called me at Punjab University, where I was professor of botany, that I need your services. I said, sir, available. He said, Mr. Z.B. Mirza, who was the honorary administrator of WWF Pakistan, has left Lahore to get a job in Islamabad. So I need you to help me. I said, most willingly. So what I arranged was I would work till 5 o'clock at Punjab University, and then in the evening go to the WWF Pakistan office, which had a clerk to help us, and Packages was providing all the support in terms of telexes and whatnot. So we were given a room in Ali Industrial Technical Institute, AITI, which in 1992 became Ali Institute of Education. So I was there as honorary administrator, and it was His Royal Highness Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, who as president of WWF International decided to visit Pakistan and India as the national organizations. So in February 1982, Prince Philip came to Pakistan. He first came to Karachi, then to Lahore, and then to Islamabad. And Dr. Pervez Hassan talked about fundraising. Syed Babar Ali hosted a dinner in Karachi, and WWF Pakistan for the first time raised 500,000 rupees on that occasion, because Syed Babar Ali asked his friends to give, he gave himself as he always does, and there was 500,000 rupees which will be written in the annals of WWF Pakistan as the first funds which came to the organization. Then towards the end of 1982, always once a year, there is the meeting of the national organizations of WWF International. And both India and Pakistan were invited because Prince had visited here and they wanted to learn what they saw. So I joined Syed Babar Ali. We went to London together, and there was this presentation regarding WWF Pakistan's work, which we did when Prince was here, and our general programs, as also by India. And after the presentations, when there was to be a group photograph, Syed Babar Ali, as always, he withdraws himself from these occasions. He was standing in the second row. And I am a witness to this, that the president of WWF India was standing next to the Prince. And he saw that Syed Babar Ali is not here. So he said something to the cameraman and then broke the arrangement. And then he went around and asked Syed Babar Ali to come and stand with him. So he is the kind of humble person who doesn't want recognition by way of projecting himself. He doesn't like advertisement, I tell you. Now, WWF went on. We were only 2 people in Lahore. Then later on, Aban Kabraji, Markar Kabraji in Karachi, he joined us. And by the time 1986, when I was to go to Morocco to join ISESCO as Director of Science, I went to him and said that here is an opportunity, I am being offered this because I applied in Government of Pakistan, put up my candidature in international organization. And he said, you must go. There was no other thing. He didn't say, okay, what will happen? He said, you go. And Morocco, especially you go because it's a lovely country. I have been there with the World Bank mission. So I went there. But before going, it was year 1985, which I would say was the most productive year and very lucky for Pakistan, that Syed Babar Ali thought of lumps and he wanted to set up a business school because he had himself been to the Harvard Business School and some of the senior managers of packages had been there, but he felt how many people can afford to go to Harvard Business School? Why not set up a business school in Lahore so that Pakistanis can benefit? And fortunately, he mentioned this to Dr. Muhammad Afzal Saab, who was the Minister for Education at the time, as well as the chairman of the University Grants Commission. And he said to Syed Babar Ali, we call him SBA, as Dr. Pervez Saab said, he is SBA to us. Dr. Afzal Saab said, why not a university? So Babar Saab said, no, this is just the beginning, we will see how it goes. He said, no, you leave it to me. So he wrote up a charter of lumps, which I found contains a clause which is there in the charter of Punjab University, where I spent 39 years of my life. And that is, any other work related to education. So it is by name management sciences, but they can do like they are doing social and humanities, science and engineering, School of Education, School of Law, Ahmad Hassan School of Law, named after Dr. Pervez Hassan's father because he helped with that. So lumps can start tomorrow medicine if you want to, because so you are like a general university, not a management sciences university. Your charter provides that. The second thing that happened in 1985 was that he set up the Babar Ali Foundation. And he gave me the honor of making me one of the members of the foundation. He himself, his lady wife, Sayyid Haider Ali, Sayyida Hina Babar Ali, and his nephew, Sayyid Fakhr Imam, are the other members. So I am the only one from outside the family, if I can call it, but I am considering myself in this family. And of course, the finance manager of packages is the honorary secretary of the foundation. One thing I must relate to you, because time went on, I went to Morocco, came back in 97 at Punjab University, which I left in 1999 as Vice Chancellor. So Syed Saab, SBA told me, you come to packages and run the Babar Ali Foundation. So I started working there. When 2005 came, it was 20 years of Babar Ali Foundation. So I said to him that as a student of conservation, I want to preserve what has been done in the last 20 years. So I want to put together first 20 years of Babar Ali Foundation. He said, no, we should not do it. We don't want publicity. No advertisement, nothing. I said, okay. He goes to his summer break he used to then in June, now a little earlier, to Seattle for 3 months. By the time he came back, I had prepared a draft. And when he came back, I gave it to him. And I knew I gave it to him on a Saturday. On Sunday evening, he called me. He said, it's fine, because I had written that it is in order to motivate others to do similar things. And for this, we are going to put together the Articles of Association and rules and regulations of Babar Ali Foundation, so that if somebody wants to set up a charity, a trust, or society, or foundation, they don't have to go to Dr. Pervez Hassan Saab for the help, which he did in the case of Babar Ali Foundation. So he said, okay, do that. So first 20 years of Barbarella Foundation was published in 2006. Time went by. Syed Babar Ali, after a little, about 4 years later, he said to me, I was still having an office at Packages, that some people have met me and they said after reading your first 20 years, we have set up a society or a trust or something. So why not update it? So I started doing that. So it became 2011, so it became first 26 years of Barbarella Foundation. Now, inshallah, next year it will be the first 35 years, because in between, Barbarella Foundation has grown very rich, because he has been very generous and given a lot of funds to the foundation, and which is now sustainable. It will continue forever, inshallah. As I said, he avoids publicity, and at the same time he says one should always be learning. And this is what he has written, his autobiography in 2015, Learning from Others. This is what the title is. And we are always learning. He has been my guide, my mentor, and I am very happy to be here on this occasion. Syed Babar Ali, SBA, may you live long. Ameen. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheikh Sab. May I request now Mr. Shahid Hussain, Rector Lums?
As some of the speakers before me have mentioned, Babar Sahab doesn't like to be talked about or people to highlight the good side of him. But I've been privileged and greatly fortunate to have known Babar Sahab for 45 years. I first met him as a teenager because my late father and Babar Sahab knew each other quite well. And courtesy of that relationship, I got to know him. And he has been a great mentor ever since. A lot has been said and a lot more will be said about his accomplishments that are public and that people are well aware of. But because of my good fortune of knowing him very closely and been blessed that the family has welcomed me in their home on innumerable occasions, I thought I'll talk more about Mr. Babar Ali, the person. There are few people that I have known who are as affectionate and as considerate to others as he is. He's worried about the people around him. How are they doing? Are they keeping in good health? Are they doing well in life? And that is a quality which is very rare. He's gifted with an unmatched memory. He is a source of history. If we sit with him, he remembers dates, names of people, 70 years, 60 years, locations. It is absolutely fascinating to spend time with him on whatever subject you are talking about, and he has some memory of people and time which can build the context like nobody else can. He's extremely humble by nature. And by humble, I don't mean in demeanor or in his words, but humble in a way that he respects and acknowledges others. The good part of others, he is so welcoming in acknowledging, and that is something that I have not seen in many people. Another aspect, he has tremendous faith in young people. Whether they are in their teens, 20s, 30s, tremendous faith is always willing to learn from them, like the title of his book. I remember we came out of a meeting from the Shalimar Hospital, and he said, let's drive together. And on the way, he mentioned that there's a young PhD in physical chemistry from MIT, Bilal Zubairi. And he said he's in Karachi for 2-3 days. Why don't we invite him over and listen to him? And from the car, we started calling his office, and we called Razak Daud Saab, we called me Altaf Salim, and Babar Saab told them, day after, I am calling this young man from Karachi. All of you better spare at least 3 to 4 hours to listen to him. And we all met this young man at LUMS, and there he was talking away about what education is like in whatever year that was. And this is a quality which is very rare. And that is one of the major reasons why he is always looking to the future, because he talks so much to a lot of young people. Has a huge ability to reach out, to connect to people, to cultivate and nurture relationships, whether they are institutional or personal. This is again a very, very rare quality. People get lazy, they sometimes don't bother, but no, not Babar Saab. Another thing that I would like to talk here, which many people may not know, he is the most prolific host ever. I don't think there's anybody in the country who hosts so many people at his home as Babar Saab does. Heather is here, probably knows more than me, but I think I know a fair bit. At least 4 days or 5 days in a week, he has somebody at his dinner table. Again, this is his ability to be connected to people, and we all have worked with him. We've read his book, Learning from Others. So I thought I'd share some of the things that are probably not being said about him. And this is something that all of us need to learn from him. Thank you ever so much, Babar Saab.
And that brings me to Shoaib Sultan Saab. Shoaib Saab, I would like to hear your comments as well.
Actually, I am a trespasser. Because when I saw the program, I didn't see my name in the list. So I rang up Abid and I said, what have you done? I must pay my tribute to Syed Babar Ali. I do not know from where he came to know about our Khan Rural Support Program, which I was implementing. And one day he came to visit me in Gilgit. And he went to all the places, he saw everything, evinced keen interest. And I was a bit surprised. He was the national president of WWF. The KRSP was not doing anything about wildlife. And he didn't say a word to me about it. And he went away. But he left that in my mind, that something needs to be done for wildlife. And it so happened I was visiting one of the valleys, Bar Valley, Nagar. And there, the village organization which I was meeting, they said, we want to protect our wildlife. And I immediately thought of Syed Babar Ali. I thought maybe this is my opportunity to do something. And I said, well, what can I, KRSP, do to protect wildlife? And they said, look, in this valley, there are 10 hunters, and they hunt ibex. And that's their livelihood, because they sell meat. So if you can find an alternative livelihood for them, then they will not do it. And I responded, look, what can a KRSP do for the hunters? I have no such position in the organization. They said, no, we can, the valley village organizations can turn these hunters into wildlife guards. If you can get us 250,000 rupees per year. So I thought I'll go to my board, and I knew that they will say, what have you done for the people that now you want money for the wildlife? So I rang up Syed Babar Ali, then would you give me 250,000 rupees? And he readily agreed. And I went to the village organization and I said, look, I'm going to invite the wildlife specialist from the wildlife department to count how many animals are in the valley. And again, I will call him after a year to count that have you lived up to the promise that you have made? And they agreed. So Mr. Ashiq Ali, who was the specialist, he came and he counted 200 ibex in the Bar Valley. And I gave the 250,000 and they then, and after a year when Ashiq Ali came back and he counted, he said, now there are from 200 there are 700 ibex. And I expressed some doubt. I said, how is that possible? He said, look, what has happened is that this valley has become a safe haven. So even the ibex from the adjoining areas have come here. And then I must say the wildlife department was very, very proactive. And they talked to the people and said, look, if we introduce trophy hunting, and the wildlife department will give you 75% of the income, then you don't have to ask for money from anyone. You will become financially solvent. And of course the villagers agreed. And that news spread round the valleys in different areas of Gilgit-Baltistan and Chitral. And everywhere that I will go to visit them, they will tell them, well, we are protecting our wildlife. Now bring the Wildlife Foundation, bring WWF. And with this help of the wildlife, and of course the arrangement of the trophy hunting, now every valley in Gilgit-Baltistan and Chitral is protecting wildlife. In fact, somebody sent me a video. Last month, a group of visitors from down country went right up to Khunjrab, although it's quite cold now. And they sent a video where they had parked their car and they were standing, and in front of them there were hordes and hordes of ibex crossing the road. In fact, in Chitral, if you go to Garam Chashma, there is a place short of Garam Chashma where they have a viewing platform on this side of the river, and in the evening you can sit there and you can see Markhor coming down to drink water in the river. And once it so happened I was there, I was told that even a snow leopard has decided to come there. And I went, and that leopard stayed there for 3 days because it found very easy prey for this markhor. I think this year, a markhor was auctioned for $100,000. And that's how they're raising the money. And most of the valleys have allowed a lot of money really to run this program. Although Barbarella Sahab was not keeping in touch with me and I was not keeping him informed what is happening, but one day I received an invitation from him to come to Lahore. And to my great surprise and joy, he made Prince Philip give me the World Conservation Medal. And I'm ever so thankful to him for this recognition. But for him, if he would not have given me those 250,000 rupees, I don't think that is how he set the ball rolling. This would not have happened in that valley. So thank you so much, sir, for that, what you did. In fact, Barbarella Sahab also brought the Duke of Edinburgh, and he came and I gave him a presentation at the KRSP office. And as you know, he's always very blunt, and he said, well, what are you doing? You're only destroying the environment. And I retorted, well, Your Royal Highness, do you know that my people, these village organizations, have planted 50 million trees? Anyway, he kept quiet, but I heard that in a speech in Karachi, he said that, well, if people do development like what a KRSP is doing, then that is what really is the one which they should do. And in fact, he was so impressed by Barbarella Sahab that when he decided to retire from the international presidency of the WWF, he requested and persuaded Barbarella Sahab to become the international president. A great honor for Pakistan, really. He never forgets people, although I've never been so closely in touch with him, but he always keeps me honoring me. One day he invited me to give the convocation at the Ali Institute, and then later on he even invited me to give the convocation address at LUMS, which was indeed a great honor for me. In fact, words fail me to describe his versatile personality and his innate humility, generosity and kindness. I have been at the receiving end of his kindness and solicitude that inspires me beyond measure. Unsolicited, I know, he keeps on praising me everywhere. It's not very often that we meet, hence the other day, it was only about 3-4 weeks back, that I received a phone call. And somebody said, I'm Babar Ali. And the voice sounded so young that I said, who? And then I realized that it was the Babar Ali. And he said, I'm in Islamabad, and I'd like to invite you for lunch. So I persuaded him that why doesn't he come to my home and we will have lunch at home. So he came. My daughter, eldest daughter, and her husband had come from France, so they were also there. And we had a very good time. And my daughter, Ruhi, said to me, she would not stop praising Barbarella Sahab. His informality, his simpleness, and most engaging conversation. And he said, a man of his stature with no ears she had never seen in any other Pakistani. To me, I think it was Sartaj who said, he is an institution. The best example of a human being, and Pakistanis are very lucky that they have someone like him in the country. And I've seen him at this age. He keeps on striving day and night, espousing one cause or the other for the benefit of humanity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and that is bringing me to the last part of today's event. May I request Shamim Ahmed Saab to share his thoughts with us?
Syed Babar Ali Saab and distinguished panelists and ladies and gentlemen. I think it's a unique privilege for me to be speaking on this occasion because I have association both with SDPI as well as with Babar Ali Saab. I have been with Babar Ali Saab as an independent director for the last almost 20 years. I remember that, I recall that after I had left the public service, after I had established CCP and then was the first chairman, I received a call from Babar Saab. But before I proceed further, I must acknowledge that while in the establishment of SCCP, the role and the assistance which I got from Sartaj Aziz Saab, who is sitting here, he was helping me at every step and giving me a lot of support. Even going to the parliamentarians to have the law passed. And that's how the institutions are built. So yes, I think in 2000, when I left public service, I received a call from Babar Saab and asking me to whether I would be could join one of the boards of his companies, which is IGI Insurance. I readily agreed, and I was very excited about it because over a long period of my career as a regulator of corporate sector, I had developed great respect for him, and I always admired him. And here was an opportunity to be working closely with him, and which I greatly valued. But he told me that don't take a hasty decision. Don't join the company unless somebody comes and briefs you and you fully understand what the company is all about. And if you feel comfortable, only then you should join the company. Now, however, I think this brief conversation gave me two messages. One is one has to be very careful in selecting companies which one should join as a director. And second, I think very important was that the value he attached to an independent director. Now, this was much before it became mandatory under the Code of Corporate Governance. So I think the good corporate practices which his companies have been following was a source of great comfort for all those who were joining his companies. And so this is, I think, how my relationship started. Now, from one company, now presently I am on the board of 3 companies of Babar Saab. And it's a great, something which I greatly value. I think we are fortunate that Babar Ali Saab has penned down his autobiography, Learning from Others. And I think this was, he did after many people were asking him to do so. And I think because he's naturally, as you all know, that it has been much talked about his modesty, and he does not like to be talked about himself, much less about his achievements. And even when we write a report, there is an annual report to be written for the companies, for the listed companies, and Babar Saab is very particular, and he tells me that we should never use any superlatives or any adjectives about our performance. We have to be modest, we have to be matter of fact. So this is, I think, these are the lessons which we continue to learn from him. His autobiography is not only gives the background of the establishment of various industrial and other ventures by him. But I think it's very importantly, it spells out the management philosophy of Babar Sahib. And I think that's something which any entrepreneur in the country has to read and to sort of follow. I think his first element of the philosophy is commitment to work. And I think what has been urging all of us is to do our best in whatever we are doing. And I remember, I think, one interview Babar Sahib was giving to an Indian journalist, and I happened to be sitting with him. And he asked him a question, a very pertinent question which many people have asked. And he said, you have done so well, but you haven't gone into banking. And I think this was, the Babar Sahib's reply was, we don't want to be the biggest, we want to be the best. So I think this is something, the commitment to work, the best in whatever we do, one has to be the best. The second, I think, element which has been talked about also earlier is continuously learning from others. Continuously learning. I think this is an emphasis, I think Babar Sahib has been emphasizing us as to we continue to learn from others. And I think his book, the title of the book itself gives a very strong message. And then not only we continue to work, to learn, but also that we should not be shy of practicing and implementing what we learn. I think now Babar Sahib, in addition to many ventures that have been talked, some of which have been talked about, and I'll talk a little bit more on them. And I think this is, he is not shy of trying new things. For instance, in the 1990s, he went into investment banking. The first international investment bank was established, which had its problems because of the some very inherent problems in the concept of investment banking in Pakistan. But I think he did try. There are many other things where Babar Sahib was the first person to do things in the country. Even when he established IGI Insurance in 1952, and that is how his journey towards establishment of institutions starts. That was the year 1952, and it was one of the first new companies coming into Pakistan, into Pakistan. While in Karachi, he set up this company because a lot of premium was going out of country, and he wanted to set up his own company so that this company could underwrite the business of the new companies which were coming into being in Pakistan. And as Razak Daud Sahib would know, that Babar Sahib continues to be very passionate about development of insurance in this country. He is passionate because he considers this to be an important vehicle of investment in this country, which has not been developed, and we have not materialized the potential that we have in this area. So I think this is the other elements of his philosophy, management philosophy, is that the manager should not have any biases of any kind, religious, sectarian, class. No, this is all, he has to look at the merit and the performance of everybody. So these are some of the elements of Babar Sahib's management philosophy. But I think in addition, we have witnessed some of the aspects of Babar Sahib's personality have been mentioned by Syed Hussain. I think he's continuously communicating with the senior management, and not only it's a discussion. Sometimes it borders on even informality. He's very curious to know about what the children of everybody is doing. He's very particular about their personal lives, as they have any problems. So I think here's an example of a person who has the warmth which radiates, and this is the personality of Babar Sahib. I would just like to say that Babar Sahib's career, if we look at his career, I think the year 1947 is a very important landmark in his life. the year when Pakistan came into being, which at that point of time had practically no industry in the country. As he has himself mentioned in his book, there were only 3 textile mills of very, very modest size, and just a few ginning factories. Now here was an opportunity and a challenge for young Barbarella Sahab. He had just completed his education, he had traveled a little bit, and had gained some experience from some of the elders in his family, particularly his elder brother Syed Amjad Ali. So I think here he was now poised to play a role in the industrialization and in the development of the new country. And this is the first enterprise that he set up. Of course, I mentioned the IGI insurance. But I think more importantly, in 1956 came packages. It was a result of his collaboration with the Rosen family, with whom he had a very close relationship. And from Reuben Rosen, I think he learned so much also about how things have to be done. I see quite a resemblance between his personality and Babar Sahab. And so I think this is how he started his journey. Now packages over the years has grown. It is not only operating within Pakistan, but also now has gone out of the country. There's already Lanka packages, and of course packages has also gone to South Africa. So I think this is a growing sort of organization. And here I would like to say, mention another thing, which the commitment of Babar Sahab to institutions, everything he would like to institutionalize. The charity and the philanthropy of packages is quite substantial. But he then decided that we should institutionalize it by setting up a packages foundation. And 1% of the profit of packages goes into packages foundation. And that is spent on charities and under a very, very well prepared policy, which requires dispersion among provinces, among various classes of persons, and I am very fortunate to have been nominated as the chairman of that foundation. So I think here is Babar Sahab's vision of how to channel the charities from the organizations, and a lesson from many other companies. I think one important aspect of Babar Sahab's industrial ventures I must mention is his belief and his commitment and his strategy of joint ventures. I think right from the beginning we noticed that he has developed the industries through joint ventures. And the reason I thought the success of the joint ventures is his own forthrightness and the transparency of the operations of his companies. The confidence which he inspires among the other joint venture partners. And I think this is, we have seen this in various companies. The Tri-Pack came with Mitsubishi, then Tetra Pak, and then of course Nestle. These are examples of Babar Sahab's joint venture relationships. And I think as has been those who study the investments, foreign investment, they think that one of the key elements and the key important requirements of bringing foreign investment to a country is that the foreign investor must have a friend in the host country. Unless there is a friend in whom he can have confidence, who can look after his interest, the joint ventures and the foreign investment would be very shy. And here is Babar Sahab's role in bringing foreign investment in so many companies, Nestle, Coke, Coca-Cola. And I think these are examples of serving this country and helping and supporting the economy of this country. So this, Babar Sahab's industrial ventures have had a sustainable impact on industrialization and the development of this country. I think lastly I must mention, and I must share with you, the style of chairing the meetings of Babar Sahib. And this is something I think also which needs to be studied and which needs to be followed. He is well prepared himself for the board meetings, and of course he allows everybody in the board meeting, every director, to participate fully, to articulate his views. But I think there's one sort of caveat. He has no tolerance for long-winded ramblings or unconnected, irrelevant sort of talk in the meetings. So I think he's very to the point, and he wants to be brief. He wants to be up to the point. And this is, I think, a quality which a good manager and a good entrepreneur needs to have. He also, I think in these meetings we learn so much from him, his modesty, his humility, which has been talked about. And I remember quite a few instances of his acting in such a humble manner. I remember when he was asking one of the very eminent entrepreneur in Karachi to chair the packages board meeting. I was sitting with him and he discussed with me. And then he called that gentleman and he said, "Are you available? I have to talk to you and I have to make a request to you." And he was very keen. He said, "No, I'll just come wherever you are sitting. I'll just come," because there's so much of respect that everybody has for him. But he said, "No, I have to make a request, so I must come over to you." So this, I think, is one of the many examples of Babar Sahib's humility and the kind of behavior that that makes him great. I think we need to be brief, so I will not talk much because we need to give more time to Babar Sahib to talk to us. So I wishing him and praying for his health and long life. May he continue to inspire all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Shmeem Sahib, and that brings me to invite Shafkat Kaka Khail Sahib for his brief remarks, the chairperson of Board of Governors of SDPI, the host of today's event as well. After him, we will have Razak Daus Sahib, and then we will listen to SBA. So.
Dear friends, the last thing I want to do is to stand between you and Syed Babar Ali Sahib. But since this meeting coincides with the conclusion of the 22nd Sustainable Development Conference, I wish to perform my pleasant duty of thanking all those who were responsible for the highly successful 4-day conference. In the first instance, Abid Suleri led a team of a few but dedicated staff members who worked literally day and night for the past 6 months to organize the various activities of the SDC. We would also like to thank, of course, the foreign delegates as well as Pakistani civil society and other representatives. The government of Pakistan also played a role in the success of our meeting. Basically this was my duty which I have performed, but I also want to say how delighted I am to see Syed Babar Ali Sahib in our midst. He's someone who is a role model for Pakistanis, and he's someone who will inspire many generations of Pakistan towards objectives. So we wish him all the best and now look forward to his words. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Sahib. And it's a privilege to now invite Honorable Minister Razak Daud Saab to present his views about Syed Babar Ali Saab, and then we'll listen from Babar Saab himself.
Babar Saab, the panelists, members of the family, ladies and gentlemen. We've come here to honor a great man, a man that I've known for almost 50 years, and somebody who is my mentor, a friend, a guidance. He's been a very, very good guide to me. I first heard about Babar in around 1969-70. I was in Laraspur and I came over to Lahore and I met a gentleman, Irshad Hussain. Irshad Hussain was a professional in packages, and when I met him, I said to him, wow, ye kaun hoga who is employed such a very good executive as a member of his team. So after a while, I spoke to him when I met him again. I says, where do you work? Packages. Oh, who runs packages? And he mentioned Babar's name. So that was the first time I heard it. I got transferred to Lahore, and in the early 70s, Babar moved into the fertilizer industry, so we got to meet each other. And then one day, he invites me for dinner. And like everybody else and the culture of Lahore, I turn up half an hour late. As I turn up, everybody's having their meal. So I sit down and start eating, and I ask the person next to me, "Ye kya hai? Kya itna jaldi?" He said, "You better stop talking, eat, because in the next few minutes it'll be his bedtime, and we'll get our marching orders." So that was my introduction over there. And we kept on meeting each other, and then one day, Babar rang me, "Razak, are you free? Come on over." I go over and meet him. And he said, "You're teaching at the MBA department of Punjab University?" And I know about it. He says, "Is there a room for another high quality business school? Because I'm thinking, I have an idea that we should put up a business school." And I said, "Yes, it's a damn good idea." In his very straight way, "I'm willing to put so much money on the table. Are you willing to match it?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Okay, now we've got the money to start with. Let's get more people." And that was the beginning of LUMS. So we said, "But what would be the structure?" And then so we decided to call Parvez. "Parvez, come on over." And Parvez, myself, and Babar, we sat, and Parvez gave the structure that how it should be, a fundraising a foundation and the institution. And that, alhamdulillah, has been the structure that Parvez put for us right from that time. And then, in his classical way, "Chalo chalo abhi jaldi karna hai, I'll start raising the fund, let's go." The next thing I get a phone call, "Chalo ja rahe America, we've got to start looking for faculty, we've got to start looking for partners, etc." So we go to America, we go to Canada, and we end up at the University of Western Ontario in London, Canada. And we meet Dean Johnson and Joe Erskine. Fine, we talk to them, and then we come back, and Babar had already communicated with Javed Hamid. Javed Hamid is on board. And then the university begins to start in the building in Gulberg. And I can tell you honestly, it was like magic. The way the environment was there, the credit goes to Babar. A lovely environment was created, and it looked as if all of us were working, myself and Parvez and Manzoor and Altaf, and we were working with such soft niyat, as if the hand of God was coming in and everything was going well for us. And time came for interviews of the students, and Babar said, no, we must interview every single student. So there we go. We're at the university, all of us sitting, and the first student comes in. A lady, Alia was her name, and Babar stands up. Welcome, would you like tea and biscuits? She was floored that how could she come for an interview and be offered tea and biscuits? And I looked at Babar and said, what's this? I said, no, we must make them feel comfortable. So that was it. As it so happened, that lady was admitted. And after she left, we all said to ourselves, oh my God, if we can get that quality of people, we are well on our way. And so we started. And then a day came when Javed Hamid had to go back to the World Bank. We're sitting there with Javed Hamid, and Javed said, no, I'm sorry, I'll have to go back to the World Bank, and you'll have to find another dean or director. By that time, Jim Erskine had come over for a few days, and I can remember it, we were walking down the stairs, and Jim Erskine was going upstairs. And as we passed him, thank you, salam, dua, everything, we went past. When we got to the bottom of the staircase, we both looked at each other. The same thing came to our mind. Why not ask Jim Erskine to replace? Back we go, and Babar, Jim, you have to join. He said, but I've got to, no, you have to join. And so Jim Erskine did join us, and it was, from there onwards, we went to USAID. USAID gave us the funds, and then with that funds, the main campus was built. It was a business school initially, then we moved on to humanities, etc. And then came the School of Science and Engineering. And Babar single-handedly raised all the money, and we got the School of Science and Engineering. A time came when myself and Shahid and others, Parvez, we sat down and we said, why don't we honor Babar and naming the school the Syed Babar Ali School of Science and Engineering. So I was given the task to go. I went to Babar, to his home. I said, Babar, the management committee has decided that we would like to name the school after you. He looked down in his full humility and says, Acha, ye karna hai? I said, yes, Babar, you have no choice. Fine, so he accepted. And then one day we were walking on campus and he said, Mera naam building ke upar mat likhna. So even to this day, although it is called the Syed Babar Ali School of Science and Engineering, his name is not on the building. And that is a sense of humility. After I'm gone, you can do what you want, but not during my lifetime. So, Babar, we can categorically assure you, after you're gone, that name will come on with great sense of pride. What have I learned in my long association with Babar? He's a long-term player, sense of commitment, and he brings together a sense of character. And that's something that's missing in our country. We don't have enough people with a sense of character. We've heard he's a remarkable fundraiser. He is. The word that I use is he's an arm twister. And I can assure you my arm is twisted because he has been after me. All along, whenever we used to meet in the management committee, Babar would always say, we're not doing enough, we have to do more, we have to do more. And it's always the same word, more, more. More time to LUMS, more funds to LUMS. You know, it got to the point where I thought that when the Americans started to say to Pakistan, you have to do more, I think they got it from Babar. Babar, you have been a friend, you have been a mentor, and people say that it is not the number of years that you live, but the number of hearts you have touched. Babar is unique. Babar is unique in the sense he's already had a long life, and may you have a much longer life. And Babar, you certainly have touched my heart. Thank you.
May I request the audience for a standing applause, a standing ovation, so that I can request Syed Babar Ali Sahab for his kind remarks to join us on the stage.
Thank you.
So if you like, you can speak from there. If you like, you can come here. It's up to you.
Could I speak from here because I feel more comfortable? But Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I don't know what to say, but I feel so humble and I'm so grateful for all the things that have been said. I don't deserve any of that. I feel very embarrassed, but I'm very grateful for the generosity with which everybody has addressed the meeting today. They don't need a long speech. They've had too many speeches already. But I do want to say that I'm greatly honored to be here today, and we feel very moved by what I've heard. I've had a long journey. I've enjoyed every bit of it. And the reason I've enjoyed it, that many of the people who have helped me along the journey are sitting here, starting from one end to the other end. Everybody has participated in this journey, everybody has helped me, everybody has guided me and enriched me. I've been very fortunate, and God has been very kind that you know, I'm 93 years old. I'm here. I can still talk and hopefully think. So very few people are that fortunate, and I'm grateful to Allah for His benevolence and His kindness. This journey has been wonderful. I've enjoyed every bit of it. It started as a private sector, then I went into the public sector. I worked in the Fertilizer Corporation as a part of Pakistan government. I was there for 4 years. I enjoyed every bit of it. And then later on, the journey that I started with Razak Daud and Dr. Parvez Hassan in the educational sector, that of course has been most rewarding. And I hope this institution will continue for hundreds of years to come to add to Pakistan's prosperity. So I will like to thank all of you, and I want to thank the audience here. They've had patience of sitting here for more than 2 hours, listening to ill-deserved tribute to myself. People have been very generous. And I would like to end with a couplet of Sadi, who said, Kamale hamnashin dar man asar kard, wagarna man hama khakam ke hastam. My companion's virtues elevated me. I am otherwise the same humble creature. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you very much. Towards the end, may I request Shafkat Kaka Khail, we have to present Living Legend Shield. I know Babar Saab's office is full of shields, but we just want to add another shield from SDPI. So Shafkat Kaka Khail Saab, if you can come forward, we can present a shield to Babar Ali Saab.
Thank you. May I now request Ambassador Shafkat Kaka Khail and Dr. Abid Sulari to please present our STC Science Anthology Corridors of Knowledge for Peace and Development.